Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new and wonderful episode of I Never Knew podcast or Inc. by Life Coach Maureen. Guys, I'm so excited. And I always say guys, I mean guys and gals. I sound like I'm from Jersey. Hey, guys. But today, wow, I just, my guests are just amazing, and the variety of subjects and life experiences amazes me. So my next guest, you guys are just gonna be in awe. Like, I was just reading his story, and we're gonna get into all his details. So today we have Terry Tucker. He is an international podcast guest, and he talks about motivation, self-development, and mindset. He has a business administration degree from the Citadel, where he played NCAA Division I college basketball, and a master's degree from Boston University, which I'm so attached to now because I was in Boston last week and I never been there, and I freaking love Boston now. They're my people. In his professional career, Terry has been a marketing executive, a hospital administrator, and Crime Junkies, hold on to your hats, a SWAT team hostage negotiator. Yay! He's been a high school basketball coach, a business owner, a motivational speaker for the past 10 years, a cancer warrior. He is an author, and he has written Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life, and the developer of the Sustainable Excellence membership. He's been featured in Authority, Global Thrive, and Human Capital Leadership magazines. Whoa. I mean, we could just go on and on and on about what he does and who he is, but now we're just going to say good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Maureen. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Oh, as you know, the podcast is I Never Knew, and it's all about storytelling. And we talk about our stories at the beginning, and then what you were feeling, how you overcame it, because everyone out there is saying, I'm going through this thing that nobody gets. And when we hear stories of other people who've been there, done that, and overcame, it really just gives us hope. And that's what my really movement for doing this in this community is. I want to bring more and more mental health awareness as a life coach, and my background in psychology and my own struggle. I think it's important that we are open about everything and vulnerable. So let's start from the beginning. What do you think when we say, what's your story, Terry?
So I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from my voice or from looking at me, but I'm 6'8" tall. And as you mentioned, I played college basketball at the Citadel. I have a brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher for the University of Notre Dame. Another brother who was 6'6", who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So I sort of joke that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on in front. But our 5'8" mother was the boss. You know, it didn't matter how big, tall, strong we were. Whatever mom said, that's kind of the way it went. So graduated from the Citadel. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And so I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. And I look back now and realize I didn't know anything about business just because I had a degree. Fortunately, I was able to find that first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. Unfortunately, I ended up living with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mom care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. You mentioned my professional career, so I really won't touch on that. But I guess finally, my wife and I have been married for almost 30 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Just a family of go-getters here. Holy moly.
She takes after her mother, believe me.
And humble. You're humble because whoa, this plethora of talent in this family. That's what I love, is seeing this connection of, ooh, we all just kind of had this thing. And I just love this 30 years. Woo, kudos to you. That in itself is an achievement, right?
Thank you. It's a shame that it is, because, so many marriages fail. don't ask me how we've done it. I mean, we just kind of support each other, and I think that's something I learned early on from my parents. You know, with my brothers and I all in sports. I mean, my parents used to do what I call divide and conquer parenting. It was, Terry's got a game over here, Dad's going to that, Larry's got a practice over here, Mom's going to that. My mother would stay up late washing our uniforms, our practice gear. She was always going to the store, buying more milk, more meat, all that kind of stuff. You can imagine having four men in the house that were like, just give me food,
Yes. Shout out to boy moms. I mean, I had one son and two daughters, and now I'm raising my 14-year-old grandson after being an empty nester. And it's like, good God, I forgot how much teenagers eat. And especially athletic boys. And it just comes in, keeps coming in and coming in. So I love the shout out to mom. Yay, mom.
Yep.
So a daughter that is absolutely amazing too. And that's got to be hard too, being, changing those ranks, changing those gender expectations. So good for her. I'm excited about that.
Oh, it was incredibly hard for me because I mean, like I said, grew up with brothers, have no sisters, went to an all guys Catholic high school in Chicago, went to an all male military college at the Citadel at the time. It's co-ed now. And then, when my wife gets pregnant and the doctor's like, you should buy pink, I was like, oh, no. You need to keep it in there till it's done. I have no idea, excuse me, what to do with a girl. Fortunately, or unfortunately, she got my height. She's 6'2", and actually went to the Air Force Academy to play basketball. Ended up having knee surgery her freshman year and didn't play after that, but got a tremendous education, and we're very proud of her.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, that height, Gene boy. Woo wee. Anyone that gets with your children is to be like, I gotta expect to have these really big heads. But that's so cool. So tell us about some of the struggles that you went through. When did that realization of this is a moment of despair and hopelessness that feels really difficult? How do I get past this? Tell us about that.
I mean, I've had different moments throughout my life. When I was in high school, I had 3 knee surgeries, which certainly jeopardized the opportunity I had to play college basketball. I was very fortunate to kind of come back from that and get a scholarship to play. But I'd say certainly my biggest challenge began in 2012 when I was diagnosed with this rare form of melanoma that appeared on the bottom of my foot. I mean, we usually think of melanoma as a skin type of disease, too much exposure to the sun, and it affects the melon, the color, the pigment in our skin. I don't ever remember, as a kid laying out with my feet up in the air, so it's like, how could I possibly have melanoma? But there's a rare form of it that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. Unfortunately, that's the cancer that I've got. And over the last 10 years, I was on a drug therapy for 5 years that gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. 2018, I had my left foot amputated. 2020, I had my left leg amputated. And I now have these tumors in my lungs, which I'm being treated for. And I know this is an uplifting podcast, so we won't dwell on all the negative. But in all honesty, I really think cancer, a couple of things. One, I don't think you really know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. And certainly this has done it for me. And the other thing is I think cancer has made me a better human being. It's made me appreciate the things that are really important in life and kind of not worry so much about all the things that I used to worry about when I didn't have cancer. So there have definitely been some positives with it.
Oh, isn't that something how your perspective changes, with health issues, especially. And I always say it's kind of an indicator of where we are mentally. These things come out physically sometimes, not realizing, oh man, this is going to change my mental outlook. And it's funny how minute, that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and It's All Small Stuff, becomes a reality when you have cancer or any health challenge. And it's okay. We want to tell your story because we're showing people that you can have this really intense thing that you think, oh gosh, this changes my whole life and my life is over and it's not going to be good. And I love that you're saying cancer. How did you say that? Cancer's made me a better person. Cancer made me, I'm going to write this down because I have a terrible memory. Cancer made me a better person. I, well, I think it definitely helps us to, because I've had myself skin cancer twice as well. And I get what you say. You think, oh, it's just these, mine's basal cell places. I live in Arizona, and you already have a 50% chance of getting skin cancer. Once you get it, 75%. Then once you get it again, 100% chance of getting it again. And where I got the cancer, same as you, hiding behind where I wear my glasses and sunglasses, it shouldn't have been there. I laid out with, baby oil in the 80s in Arizona. I should have it everywhere. So I think sometimes we're predisposed to these cancer cells. I also had cervical cancer. So I get it. And before you get the facts, or before you really know what the longevity is or how you're going to deal with it, you just question. You're like, okay, have I done everything I want to do? Have I loved the way I need to love? Tell me what was going through your mind when all of this was happening.
I think when I first found out, I had a callus break open on the bottom of my foot, and at the time I was a high school basketball coach, so I really didn't think about it when it happened, because as a coach you're on your feet a lot. But after it didn't heal for a couple of weeks, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an X-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there, and I can cut it out." And he did, and he just showed it to me. It was this little gelatin sac with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I get the call from him. And as I said, he was a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he was having explaining what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming. Until finally, he just laid it out for me. He said, "Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years. I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have this rare form of melanoma." And he recommended I go to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston and be treated. And I remember when he told me, I think I went through all the stages that we associate with grief. First it was, well, I can't possibly have cancer. I've done everything right in my life. I eat right, I exercise, I don't abuse alcohol and drugs, etc. And then you kind of get mad. It's like, wait a minute, I've done it. How could this possibly be happening to me? And then you sort of bargain. I found myself bargaining with God. It's like, look, our daughter's in high school. Look, I'd like to live long enough to see her graduate. And then you get to a point where I think you kind of get a little down. At least I did. And then you get to a point where, or at least I did. I can't say everybody does this, but what I went through was, okay, this sucks, but I'm going to have to embrace this suck. I'm going to have to, these are the cards I've been dealt. I don't like these cards, but I'm going to have to play them to the best of my ability. And I made a decision very early on that I wasn't going to take out my misfortune on a doctor, on a nurse, on a therapist, on somebody that was helping me or trying to help me either get better or to beat this. And I've seen so many people, they're so mad, they're so afraid that they just project that out onto, to doctors and to nurses and things like that. And I think it's a choice. You have a choice to do that. And I just chose not to do it. No matter how bad I'm feeling, it's not their fault I got cancer. They're here to help me. So why would I make their life any more miserable than it already is, trying to deal with people like me who have cancer?
Oh, I agree 100%. And I'm guilty of that. And fortunately, you had good care. I think the fear comes out in anger. The fear comes out in somebody fix this for me. And I love that you said those stages. Isn't it funny when we have health issues, people automatically want to blame themselves?
Yeah.
They want to say, oh, well, I shouldn't have drank alcohol. I shouldn't have smoked. I should have exercised more. It's like, things are going to happen. We're going to have health issues. It's just the human experience. We're in a physical body. So I love that. As a relationship expert, I want to ask you how difficult it was with you and your wife. How did you process that as a couple?
Yeah, it was. I mean, my wife's Norwegian. She's very stoic. I'm much more emotional. I mean, you show me the movie Field of Dreams, I'll cry at the end of it every single time. You play the music, I'll probably cry. So I'm much more emotional. I mean, I remember when I found out. I mean, I remember exactly where I was. I had a consulting business on the side, and I was in a FedEx parking lot in Houston, Texas, in the hot, steamy weather when my cell phone rang, when I found out from my podiatrist. And I remember going to the car, turning the car on, turning the air conditioning, thinking, oh, this is just going to be hey, everything's okay, get on with your life. And it turned my entire world upside down. So my first call was absolutely to my wife, who was at work. And it was like, a lot of silence, a lot of processing, and then we'll get through this. And that's the hardest part for me, having a wife and a child that this affects mentally. I can deal with the physical pain. I can deal with all the garbage that goes along with, throwing up and shaking and all that kind of stuff. But it's the mental pain. It's what you're putting your family through. And I remember when I had my leg amputated, my doctor wanted to start me on chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs. And I looked at him and I was like, is it going to save my life? And he was like, probably not, but it may buy you some more time. And I was 8 years into this trip, into this journey. And so I said, I don't think I want to do that. If the end game is going to be the same as whether I take it or not, I'm not sure I want to go through all that. So, but I said, go home and talk to my family about it. And our daughter was home from college. And I remember going in and saying, okay, here's the deal. He wants me to do chemotherapy. I don't think I want to do it. My daughter's immediately, all right, we need a family meeting. I'm like, family meeting? There's 3 of us. It's not like we got a board here or something like that, So we sit around the kitchen table and we talk about how we individually feel about me having chemotherapy. And when we've all had our turn, my daughter's like, all right, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy? And my wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, wait a minute. Am I getting outvoted for something that I don't want to do? But I remember back when I was in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we love the most to class. And as we were learning different techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned that you will fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. So I ended up taking chemotherapy, not because I wanted to, but because my wife and daughter wanted me to, and I loved them more than I loved myself. And in hindsight, it was the right decision. It was a bridge to get me to the drugs that I'm on now. But if it hadn't been for them, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
Wow, that's so incredible, because what we do is when we get into this sort of moment of our own perspective, we forget, well, what would you do if your wife had cancer? You would have been all on board for chemo. You would have said, I don't care what we have to do, we're doing it. And that's definitely a great way to show people that it's a when you're in a family and you explained unconditional love is I love them more because they mean everything to me. And if it causes them pain because of something I don't want to do,
Right.
with still being true to ourselves and our wishes, and you could have ultimately said, no, I'm not going to, and they still would have supported and loved you, but still you were so kind to say, you know what, I get it. I need to do whatever you guys think I should do. Maybe I'm in a moment of just kind of, maybe I'm giving up. Maybe I'm just fed up. I don't want to be sick. I want to enjoy life. So both perspectives are super, super fair. And I love that you brought in the police academy training, which I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I told you I was a self-proclaimed crime junkie. So I have to hit on, or my fellow listeners who are as well are going to hate me if I don't. So let me relate mental health to the hostage negotiation because I'm fascinated. I have a background in criminal psychology and forensic psychology. So, of course, I'm always about the why. What do you find in your experience as a SWAT team negotiator was the catalyst that got these people to this point? And then tell us, what was that thread that you were able to get them back off the ledge or to conform to the things we needed them to do?
Yeah, I think there were so many different things that we did as negotiators. I mean, some of it was real simple. It was, somebody got a tip that a homicide suspect was in this particular apartment. So we would surround the apartment with the tactical team, and then we would try to negotiate them out. That was, sorry, you got caught. Somebody dropped a dime on you, and we know where you are. And do you want to come out? Do you not want to come out? And through all the negotiations that we did, about 90% of the time, we were able to get the person out safely. About 10% of the time, the people decided, I'm not going back to jail, or I'm not, going to go to prison for the rest of my life, or whatever it was. And we would do the best we could, but they would decide to end their life, and they would do that. And while I always felt bad, because obviously there's somebody somewhere that loves that person, whoever they are, even if they committed, they killed another person. Somebody loves them. They got a mom or a dad, or whatever, a wife, kids. And I always looked at it like, look, we did the best we could. But I mean, how fair is it to bring somebody who knows nothing about you and your situation into a problem that may have been festering for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, maybe even 40 years, and now it came to a head on this day at this time? I mean, let's face it, if your house is surrounded by the police and you're talking to me, you're probably having the worst day of your life. And so there was that kind of individual. There was the person who was drunk, and did something stupid. I'll give you kind of a funny story. One night I was working, and this guy barricaded himself in his house with a gun and his wife as a hostage. And I get to the scene, and I'm talking to the officers, and I'm like, what's the deal? It's like, he's drunk. He's barricaded himself. And so I said, do you have him on the phone? He said, yeah, let me talk to him. So we talked for a while. And there's kind of a rule in negotiation that you don't talk very early in the negotiation about coming out, about solving the problem. You have to develop trust. You have to, do things like that. And I think trust is the overarching part of being a negotiator. I mean, we never lied to people. People would say to us, hey, I'll come out, but you got to promise me I'm not going to jail. And we would have to say, well, when you come out, you are going to go to jail. And then we would try to deflect the conversation to something else. But anyway, so back to this story. So this guy's drunk. So I've got him on the phone. And I just had a feeling in talking to him. We were about 10 minutes into the negotiation. I said to him, what would it take for you to come out? And there was a long pause. And then he said, give me a beer. I said, if I gave you a beer, do I have your word you would come out? He said, do I have your word I could drink it? And I said, absolutely, you have my word. He said, well, then I'll come out. So I gave $5 to one of the officers. I said, get out of the store, buy a beer. The tactical team put it on the front porch, and I called them back. I said, your beer's on the front porch, but you don't get it until you let your wife go. You put the gun down and you come out with your hands up. All of a sudden, the front door flies open. Here comes his wife. Here he comes with his hands up. We handcuff him, let him drink his beer, and off to jail he went. So that is not a typical negotiation, but that was certainly one that was kind of funny.
It totally was. It was the keep it simple, stupid, thing.
Right.
Like just do what you do. And I'm going to call you the original life coaches of crime. Like you really did do what a life coach or a counselor or a therapist does, is let me find a connection. Let me put you at ease, and let me also hold you accountable. And I think that's, you found the secret to everything I believe in this life is connection. Let me find a thread. Let me find a connection with you where you build, like you said, the arch of trust. And I just think that's super, super amazing. And you're right. Sometimes when there's desperation to a point of despair, there's no coming back from that. And obviously my goal with mental health awareness is, let's not let people get to desperation and despair. Let's get them before they go down that rabbit hole, and we can work on these things and let you see from a different perspective, life is not all that horrible. So
I'm sorry.
No, you go
I
ahead.
was going to say that you're absolutely right. And I think that's an incredibly important point to make. A lot of times when we were negotiating with somebody and we thought they might be thinking of harming themselves, or we would ask, we would just flat out ask, are you going to shoot yourself? Are you thinking committing suicide? Whatever we use. And I found that ordinary people who don't have the training that you and I have and things like that, they're like, oh, I suspect something, or I think something might be going on here, but I don't want to say anything, because if I say, hey, are you thinking of killing yourself? I'm putting that thought into their mind. That's exactly the opposite of what the situation is. I mean, so we would ask people, it's like, hey, are you thinking of hurting yourself? And if they were, it was like opening the door. It's like, oh my God, thank you for asking that. And now we can talk. If they weren't, you would get something like, no, you idiot, I'm not thinking of hurting myself. And it's like, but that's okay. Again, that's me having trust or building trust with you. And there were a lot of times we would spend 2 or 3 hours over here talking about something, building that relationship, building that trust. when the real problem was over here, and we hadn't even gotten to why we were really at that point. And, I talk a lot about, people used to say, well, good job, you talked that person out. What we really did was listen the person out. And the importance of listening, and not listening to respond, but listening to understand. It'd be like, Maureen, I hear what you're saying. I may agree with you, I may not agree with you, but help me understand why you're doing this. And the other thing we used to do is we would mirror, so they would say something and we would throw that right back at them. And we just wanted them to talk and to burn off a lot of that emotional energy. And so we would do that with how and what questions. Well, how do you see this going tonight? So now, it's my job to try to get you out by using how and what questions. Now I'm actively engaging you in helping me do that. So now you're trying to think of, so you don't realize you're doing it because of the questions that I'm asking you, but all of a sudden now you're trying to figure out how we can get you out. And that's what we're trying to do. People are like, why questions? Why questions can be kind of accusatory. Well, why'd you do that? Oh, wait a minute. Are you accusing me? So how and what questions are just a lot better than why questions.
Oh, all of it. All of what you just said is so relatable to everything in every relationship. I mean, I love that. The why questions are, boom, I'm going to throw up my defenses and now you're not going to get through. I've got a wall. Now you got to get over that wall or through that wall, and that's not going to happen. But the how and what, which is so pertinent in our lives, because it's just like that, like I said, when it comes to mental health, this is what I love. You and I talked about being over 50, and I'm not going to disclose either of our ages, although I am proud of being a nifty 50, but we've both been here at least a half a century. And our families in mental health, like you said, oh, if we ask you if you're going to commit suicide, it's going to put it in your head. That really was the narrative growing up for me anyway. Was I feel like my parents didn't want to open any doors to invite me to think a different way. And it's like, but I was thinking that way anyway. What you say about the how and what is, I hear you. And I wrote down, you'll see me look over and write stuff down because you say things and I'm like, I got to remember that. You said, listen the person out. We should, that should be the thing we do in our lives. Listen every person out, because the two things I believe that every human wants is acceptance and validation. And the minute you mirror what they're saying, and I teach this with my couples when I coach, is listen and then echo what that person said. Don't say, oh, but I don't see it that way. It's different for me.
Yeah.
Say, oh, so that sounds like that was really difficult for you. Was that difficult for you? Let them. I had to laugh when you said your wife is a Norwegian Stoic. My husband is a Norwegian Stoic engineer. So our opposite ends of the emotional spectrum are as far as they could be, but he is the crier with the movies where I'm not a crier. But my husband is very commonly wanting to sort of diminish the seriousness or the emotional impact I'm having. And he doesn't, we just recently had this talk about something I was going through. And I'm like, don't diminish it. I know you want it to go away, and that's his method of fixing it. So like you said, if you're negotiating, you'll be like, oh, you'll be okay. This too shall pass. Come on, just come on out and let's do this. No, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to say, I hear what you're saying. That's really difficult, what you're expressing. I would feel the same way. And I tell my husband, just give me a minute to process it. I'll go through those stages. Like you said, the denial, the anger. I stay stuck in anger a lot because my hurt turns into anger, and most of us do. My behavior then comes out of anger, and then I have to get past that to the acceptance and just say, okay, it is what it is. Then I go to action. Okay, what can I always tell my clients, circle of control. What can I control about this? My feelings, my thoughts, my words, and my actions. That's all I can do. I can't help what other people are doing. So
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, all of what you just said is so relatable to life and relationships.
It is. And I think even for us as negotiators, and I'm sure you probably will agree with this, a lot of times, and the reason, negotiations were so physically demanding is because, a lot of times if somebody's just, they're pulling their hair out angry, you have to attach an emotion to that, and it's kind of like what you were just saying. It's like, and you have to get the emotion right. So, if somebody's pulling their hair out angry and you say something like, you seem a little upset. Well, you totally missed it. You totally missed where they're coming from. I mean, you need to kind of get down in the mud and in the weeds with them and be like, man, you are really pissed off, and oh, wait a minute. Okay, now this guy understands me. He realizes I'm pissed off. Now we get into the, well, why are we here and how can you help me and what can we do and all that. I mean, that's in my head. The why question I'm not throwing out at them, but the what and the how question, okay, I hear what you're saying, what got us to this point and blah, 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 so that's why negotiation, when they go on for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, you're exhausted because you're on the emotional roller coaster with this person. And it's, 5 hours, you kind of like pour yourself out of the seat. It's like, oh, you were in a mobile home with a bathroom and water. Yeah, but you have no idea what I was going through emotionally with that.
Oh, 100%, because your energy had to match their energy. And it's funny, after I life coach someone, I'm like, whew, I need a nap, because
Right.
I am, expelling as much energy because I need to meet you there. We could
Right.
not have this podcast and you be up, and I'm like, oh, that's really great. Yeah. I always say I'm high energy. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I go well with cookies. So, you've got to meet that energy of the people that you're with, and it is absolutely exhausting. One of the things we do, obviously, with psychology and in my life coaching background, is the emotion wheel. And like you said, we got to name these emotions. But what's interesting is a lot of my clients will say, I don't know, Maureen. I'll say, well, how does that make you feel when that person does it? He's like, I don't know. I don't know. And I'll say, that's okay. I don't know is an answer, because I don't know means I can't put my finger on what I'm feeling. I'm confused. I'm out of control. I don't understand. Let's work a little bit further to pin it down to what emotion is it and why did it trigger you? So that's really a great way of you saying, man, I'm exhausted. I've got to make this long connection with someone before I'm ever going to get a solution. You only had hours. I have months and years with clients to do that. So I get that, how exhausting that is. So, changing gears a little bit, all that you have gone through, and just the struggles, especially being an athletic family, and I'm sure in your family it's like athletics are everything, our physical health is everything, being able to do sports, and to lose your leg and your foot had to be like a whole nother, like, this is a new life starting from this point on. So you became wonderfully this motivational person, this mindset changer. What do you do now with all the things in your business? What do you teach people from your experience?
Yeah, it's funny because I had a nurse recently ask me that was taking care of me. She said, what was it like to lose your foot, in 18 and then to lose your leg in 2020? And I've told her it hasn't been easy. I'm 6'8". I'm still learning how to walk again with the prosthetic. And it's been 2 years. I don't trust the prosthetic. That's my problem. It's not the prosthetic. It's a great prosthetic. But, let's face it, falling when you're 6'8" is not an option. You get hurt. But what I told her was, cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And that's who I am. That's who you are, Maureen. That's who your husband is. That's who everybody who's listening to us is. And we get so caught up in, working on our physical bodies almost at the expense of our heart, our mind, and our soul, who we really are. And this is just a house or a vessel or whatever you want to call it, to house who we really are. So I try to get people to look at it that way. And the other thing that I try to get people to just look at it wise is that, I started playing basketball when I was 9 years old and played all the way up until I graduated from college when I was 21. And I think what team sports taught me, and this was just team sports for me. I think it could be whatever team you're on, whether it's a family or you're playing in a band, whatever that ends up being. One of the things that team sports taught me is the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And you realize on a team that if you don't do your job, not only do you let yourself down, but you let your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down, etc. And if you think about it, the biggest team game that we all play is this game of life. So I try to encourage people and don't get me wrong, I'm still going through cancer treatment. I have bad days. I cry, I get down, I feel sorry for myself. But when I'm doing that, I'm looking inward, woe is me, this is terrible. And I find a great way to kind of get out of that mode is to look outward. Who can I help? Who can I pick up the phone and call? Who can I say, hey, you want to have a cup of coffee? Who can I just say good morning to? Now, all of a sudden, I'm not focused on me anymore. I'm focused on somebody else, and I'm trying to make a positive difference in their life. So we all get into those dark and ugly places. We're humans. I don't care how tough or strong you are. You're going to have those things. And when you do that, stop looking inward and start projecting outward.
Yes. Yes. I have a lot of clients that have body dysmorphia or, they've secluded. And I always say, you got to find a hobby where you're contributing. And when you're contributing, like you said, to something outside of yourself, there's a reward in that for you bigger than you think. It seems like, well, I got to go out and help these people. No, you're really helping yourself, whether it's helping dog rescues or, reading to children in the hospital. I agree with you 1,000,000% because I think that's why we're here. You cannot be secluded in a cave somewhere and be healthy as a human. It's about interaction. And if you did not tell me you had rough days and angry days and crying days, I'd say, well, then you're not a human. You are a robot. Because even as a life coach, I always say, the days I have bad days, I'll go, uh-oh, the life coach needs life coaching. It's like, I know what I would tell my client, but
Right.
I'm not doing that for myself. So we do that, even though it doesn't matter, the most popular, famous, motivational people, everyone has these experiences. And that's the beauty of podcasts and the movement of mental health awareness for me is we're all human. We all have success. We all have failure. We all have sadness. We all have, these overwhelming moments. And the theme across the board is we can reach out to others. And the more vulnerable we are, the more we share our story, the more people feel connected and less alone. Right.
You're right. I remember hearing a story about Mr. Rogers, who we both probably grew up with. When he died, they were going through his stuff and cleaning his things out. And supposedly somebody came across his wallet and pulled out a piece of paper in his wallet that said, life is for service. And if you think about that, it really is. There's a quote from Mother Teresa who says, God never asked us to be successful. He just asked us to be faithful. And if you think about how it's not about us, if we all took the attitude of I'm here to serve, whatever that is, to serve your God, if you believe that, but to serve yourself. And we need, like you say, we need help from time to time. I don't care how strong you are, but to focus and make a difference in other people's lives. Think how much better the world would be if it wasn't all about me. It was about what I can do to help another person.
Yes. And it's, in a world where it's hustle, hustle, money, money, and we're comparing ourselves to others. I have a wonderful saying that I saw about social work and mental health. And I love saying this: I'm not in it for the income, I'm in it for the outcome. And when you're passionate, I worked in corporate in the medical field for many years, 28 years, and then started the life coaching business and wrote 2 books. And oh my gosh, now when I get up and I do something, this is everything to me. Like, this is my filling my tank every day. And I never realized I could do something that is quote unquote work that doesn't feel like work. And when you don't care about the money and about the success or the accolades, they just come. So that's so true. Be at ease about everything, and then the easier things come to you. So I love it. Let's talk about your book. Let's talk about your 4 truths that you talk about. And his book, guys, is called Sustainable Excellence: 10 Principles Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. I just love that. That tells us everything. Okay, what do I do? What do I do? So tell us your 4 truths. What are the 4 truths that we need?
So the 4 truths actually are not in the book. I came up with the 4 truths afterwards. But the 4 truths I have them on a Post-it note right here. So I see them every day. They constantly get reinforced in my mind. And they're just one sentence each. The first one is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more determined, more resilient individual. The third one is more what I like to consider a legacy truth, kind of thinking about the end game. A lot of people don't like to think about that, but it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the fourth one, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And I look at these four truths as sort of the bedrock of my soul. They're just a good place to build a quality life off of. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people have. You know, we talk about goals, we talk about New Year's resolutions and things like that. And why do those fail so often? I think the reason is because people don't know what their values are. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know what they'd be willing to die for. If you know your values, it's much easier to develop goals based on those values that you could possibly achieve, as opposed to, I want to make $1 million, or I want to be, rich by the time I'm 30, or I want to marry the hot model, or whatever it is. If you don't have any values, you have no foundation on which to base those goals. And as a result, they're going to be much harder to obtain.
Yes, yes. I always talk about, if you're going to create something, a niche or a business, I do business coaching as well. And I always, they'll say, but I don't know how to do this. And I said, don't worry about the how. Let's get down to the why. Why do you want to do that? Why are you passionate about it? And if you can't answer that, you have no business starting that business,
Right.
or talking about it, or speaking about it, or podcasting about it, or writing about it. Like, you have to do the why. The how follows. It
Right.
just starts coming, that inspiration. And it's funny how it will just grow from there. And I'm sure you, like you said, everything kind of flipped over. It went from sort of a basketball world to, wow, I got this pain, I got this struggle. What is it for? And using it as fuel. And I love, 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 all of those are foundations. I mean, mindfulness, I have a Facebook group called Mindfulness and Positivity Seekers. Mindfulness is, I control everything I think. I control everything I think. And I believe the biggest struggle through that I've seen with everyone is the putting more of that value on, what does everybody else think about me? Right. I say we got to get in line with the three things that need to be in alignment with us, with those foundations that you just mentioned. The values is my self-confidence, my self-esteem, and my self-image. If I'm giving those away to everyone around me, then I'm not in control of how I feel about myself or how I think about myself. And you can't have two okay and one not okay. So it's really, how do I feel about myself? How do I feel about what I'm doing in the world, the changes and the differences that I'm making? How do I feel about my purpose, my point in being in this life? You come alone, you leave alone. Sometimes we get wrapped up in, my happiness is good if this person's good to me, or my happiness is good if this job is going well. And that's where we got to regroup. We talk about COVID a lot. I talk about with a lot of guests, like COVID was a changing moment for so many people, wasn't it? It was just this, people changed careers, people got divorces, people moved, lost homes. I think that was symbolically and literally and figuratively a coming into ourselves and finding the value you speak of. This is what's important to me. Did you have any difficulties during COVID? Was there anything that you had an aha moment on?
Yeah, I lost my leg during COVID. I mean, my wife literally dropped me off at the hospital to have my leg amputated. I was not allowed to have anyone with me. I was in the pre-op area. I was the only person in a hospital pre-op area. I mean, pre-op is everybody who's getting prepped for all different kinds of surgeries. I was the only person there. I was not allowed to have anybody with me. My doctor took me to an outlying hospital that had all the resources to do the surgery, but did not accept COVID patients. And I was supposed to be in the hospital for a week learning how to function without a left leg. My doctor's like, you're in for 48 hours. Tell your therapist, I'll tell them to teach you everything you need to know in 48 hours. And my therapists were pulling their hair out. They were like, we need more time. I'm like, you don't have more time. I don't care how long. If you need to go till 10 o'clock at night, I'll stay awake and we'll do it. But whatever you need to do is teach me. And I think that the hardest thing especially for my wife. I mean, she was like, "What do I do?" I'm like, I don't know. Just go park in the parking lot and wait for my doctor to call you when it's over. I mean, I had my leg taken off. It took, many hours. But what do you say to somebody? What do you say to your spouse who you've been with, for a long time? That's like, you can't be with me. I'm going to have to deal with this myself. And all I told her was, just go to the parking lot and pray. That's all I can ask you to do, and we'll get through this. And we did. So yeah, COVID. A lot of people lost things. I lost a limb during COVID.
Wow, I'm so happy I asked that question because you literally took my breath away because it's such a devastating surgery to go through, to not have, that person that you need the most right by your side right before you go in, the helplessness that your wife felt, the hopelessness that you felt, and the rushing of the, drive-through surgery, hurry up and hurry up and get out. Oh my gosh, your resilience. That's what it is. It's resilience of saying, this is the situation. We're going to accept it and we're going to deal with every minute as it comes. And I can't even imagine. My husband was in ICU with a pulmonary embolism, and I slept on the dang couch in his room, and I would not leave for 3 days. So I can't, I mean, my empathy and my heart, it breaks for what your wife was feeling, the fear. I can't be there. I can't let him know that I'm there, but you knew she was there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
wow, that is the most intense COVID story I've ever heard. And I admire you even more now. I'm just,
Thank you.
wow, that's just so huge. It's no wonder you go and tell your story, because people need to hear that it doesn't matter what you go through. We all have worst to, best, and you made it. You made it. How did you pursue the drive and motivation even to do that so quickly, to get up? Was it, I got to get home to my wife, I got to do this so I can get home and get out of here? Or was it just, this is where I'm at?
I mean, part of it was, I mean, people have asked me, what do you think about the night before, you're going to have your foot amputated, the night before you're going to have your leg amputated? And this may sound kind of weird, but for some reason, I thought about all those young men and certainly some women who were on those boats the night before D-Day. The night, these 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids who were going to get mowed down, who were going to die and never really have a life. And I thought, how much have they been feeling? How much, fear, how much anxiety, how much, oh my God, am I going to live? Am I going to die? I'm probably going to die because, and I thought, for some reason, I thought, well, those people had it a whole lot worse than I did. So yeah, okay, I'm going to lose my leg, but I'm probably going to be okay. I'm probably not going to be hit by a bullet while we're in surgery or anything like that. But I thought about other people who are worse off than I am. And I think we can always do that. There's always somebody who's worse off than we are, despite how much we think, oh, this sucks. And, I'm feeling down and depressed. I guarantee you there's somebody probably close to you that's worse off than you are. And that's why I go back to, stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about how you can make a difference in somebody else's life. All of a sudden, your problems don't seem as big, don't seem as overwhelming, and you're making a positive difference in somebody else's life.
Yes. Funny that you related it to war, because it was a war. It was an
It was.
internal war with yourself. It was an internal war of, this is something that's going to change. I'm never going to be able to get back, and I'm going to have to deal with this. And you think of all of our soldiers in Afghanistan that, we had more limbs lost than we did lives.
Right.
And that's, you're an inspiration to them. It's like, we can still go on. You can't take my spirit, you can't take my soul, you cannot take my thoughts, you cannot take my heart. And that really is, our bodies are just this outer shell of who we really are and what we leave as a legacy. I always say to my clients with the body dysmorphia, I'll say, at your funeral, are people going to say she had really nice hair, or are they going to say she was a really good, kind person? you talk about something that I say with my clients. I use this method and I call it the worst case scenario. When you're going through something that seems really, really difficult, think of the worst case scenario and then you work backwards. And you just said that. You said there's always someone that has it worse, but think of the worst thing that could happen. And usually we're going to come up with, well, I didn't die, it didn't kill me. So, that if it didn't kill me, it made me stronger. But
Right.
I like to do that because I'll gain a perspective of, okay, if it's not this worst thing, then I'm capable of dealing with whatever else it is. That's really, as humans, we have to talk ourselves down. I think sometimes talk ourselves off the ledge until we get into a practice. And I think the practice of mindfulness is stay in the facts. And I've been recently teaching, the emotional mind when you're born is just reactive and emotional and, uncontrolled. And then you've got your rational mind, which is all facts and kind of cold and no emotion. And then you get to the wise mind in the middle. That's where we want to be. But that takes practice, recognizing, oh man, I'm really reactive right now. I'm probably in my emotional mind, or I'm really just kind of cold and going through the motions. Uh-oh, I better get some emotion balance and get to that wise mind place right in the middle. So I love that you said that about it was a war. It was like
It was. And it's funny, when we were negotiators, we kind of talked about that. We described it as sort of a teeter-totter or a seesaw that, at the park, that when we started negotiating with somebody, their emotional end was way up in the air and their rational end was down on the ground. And over time, as I said, asking those open-ended questions, you kind of bring that teeter-totter to equilibrium, and hopefully you get to a point where their rational brain, their rational mind is up in the air and their emotional brain is down on the ground, because we all make better decisions when we're using our rational mind than we do letting our emotions run away with us and stuff like that. So that's the time, when the emotional side is down on the ground and they're talking or dealing with their rational mind. Now you can talk about, putting the gun down, coming out, letting the hostage go. You can't do that when somebody's all emotional and stuff like that. They're not hearing what you're saying.
yes, I just had a thought as you were speaking, and I was thinking maybe I have a theory and you can validate this. Do you ever notice that we're more emotional at night? Do you
Yeah,
ever
because we're
know?
tired. We're tired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's and in most of your negotiation, I'll bet you happened at night.
The vast majority. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and starting maybe 8 o'clock at night, but going till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of times it was, I hate to say that. I mean, yeah, we were good at what we did, but sometimes we just wore people down. They didn't really want to kill themselves and they knew they weren't going to get out of it. So I'm tired. Okay, I'll come out.
Yeah, you're
So
like, we're not going anywhere. We have all the time in the world.
yeah,
So,
we can be here as long as you want. I can bring another negotiator in. I can go and go to sleep. You, on the other hand, you're not going anywhere.
yeah, we're not going away. We're
Right.
like the ants that you don't have an exterminator for. We're coming. We're all just gonna keep coming.
Right.
Because I find that I'm a night owl, and I'll find that I'm most creative at night. So I will write a speech at 3 a.m. and be really good at it. But also, if I'm having a problem and I stay up late, it just keeps like building and building and building. And I'll, as they say, sleep on it. I get up the next morning. I'm like, gosh, what was I was like out of control last night, or I was so overthinking this thing. It's like the light of day brings more of that rational fact, reality to us. So, I'm going to say, don't make decisions at night. I'm going to go with that. So, which brings me to the two questions I ask every guest. You are you're leading a parade of 100,000 people behind you, and you have a banner in your city downtown. What does your banner say about your movement?
That's a great question. I think it would really say, and I think this is important. We talked about it a little bit before. I would want my banner to be something more along the lines of listen to understand versus listen to reply. I mean, I think, as a society, as a world, we're just screaming at each other right now. And the more we scream at when you're screaming at me and I'm screaming at you, I can't hear what you're saying and you can't hear what I'm saying. And so I think we need to get back to a point where, just because we disagree with something doesn't mean you're bad. we're going to agree to disagree, but you're still my friend. You're still somebody I want to have a relationship with, whatever that is. And for some reason, we've gotten to a point now where if you don't agree with me, then you're a bad person. And it's like, wait a minute, when did that happen? Maybe it was COVID. Maybe it was even before that, but I would hope my banner would say something like, we're here to listen, to understand, as opposed to listening to respond.
Yes, yes. And listen the person out is what you had said. So I love that. Listen to understand, not to respond. I completely agree with you. And I think maybe the lines got a little bit blurred, especially when I think of mental health, where we're all about standing in our truth, and we're about being able to remove toxicity and things that don't work for us. But I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding between, we have different viewpoints versus you're a toxic person. And I think
Right.
we need to have more discernment in that area, because I think that's really, we're all talking about now, let's be true to ourselves. Let's be authentic. Let's stick to our boundaries. But I think we're now going maybe a little over sensitive, where it's like, oh, you don't agree with me, you're not aligned with me, you don't need to be in my life. So I agree with you. There's a little bit of a fine line there, where we have to listen to someone else's perspective, because it helps us better make a better informed decision about how we feel about things. And if you shut that off, they call that the flexible and inflexible mind. If you have an inflexible mind, you're going to go through life not learning anything. You're not going to have those experiences. You're not going to draw in the people that, like these podcasts, and you every day, I get these beautiful, beautiful conversations and nuggets of wisdom just by giving time and energy to people. You can exchange that knowledge and that emotion and that connection. And so I love that. So as we wrap up, my very last question is, what is Terry's shameless self-indulgence? And self-indulgence, and I don't care if it is a food, if it's an activity, if it's just swimming. And people have so many different things. What's yours?
I think mine would be it. I don't have access to it now because I live in Colorado and it is in Chicago, but it would be Nick and Vito's thin crust sausage pizza. I could eat like a million of them. They would be terrible for me, but they are. When my brothers still live in Chicago, and whenever they go, they always call me like, hey, guess where we just ate? I'm like, you're killing me.
Torture.
So they do that. I would say it would be, that pizza is it for me. That absolutely.
Oh, well, my husband's from Colorado, so I'll have to ask him if there's any, and he lived in Chicago, which is really ironic. So I'm going to ask him. So Nick and Vito's?
Actually, I think it's Vito and Nick's. We always knew it. Nick was the son. We knew the son. The dad was dead, when we were growing up. But yeah, it just a little corner place, 83rd and Pulaski in Chicago. I can picture it right now. So
it really had an impact. So I'll consult with my husband if there's anything equal to that in Colorado.
Please, I would love to know. Yes.
You'll have to do a road trip with your wife. I don't care how far it is.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. Right.
Well, you have been such a pleasure, and I'm just so awe-inspired by you. I thank you. I say to every guest, you just gave me an hour of your life you're never going to get back, and you gave that to me as a gift, and I don't take that lightly, and I have so much gratitude for you. Thank you for sharing your story. Tell us where we can get your books, where people can sign up for your memberships. This is your moment to plug away.
Sure. So Sustainable Excellence can be gotten anywhere. You can get a book online. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, wherever you can get a book online. You can get Sustainable Excellence. The membership is sustainableexcellencemembership.com. If you don't want to spend the money for the book, you can always go to sustainableexcellencemembership.com and download a free copy of the book there. And then if you want to send me a note or a message or something like that, I have a blog called Motivational Check. Well, it's all one word, motivationalcheck.com. Every day I put up a thought for the day, and with that thought comes a question about maybe how you could apply that in your life. I have recommendations for books to read, videos to watch, things like that. But you can leave me a message at motivationalcheck.com.
Ooh, I'm signing up. I'm gonna be there for sure. I love that, to be able to collaborate with like minds on just positivity and fun things. I love it. So, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this podcast as much as I have, and enjoyed Terry as much as I have. I feel like I have so much knowledge and appreciation. If you have any comments about this podcast, if you want to reach me or you need to reach Terry any way, please contact me at lifecoachmaureen.com. My books as well are available on Amazon. My dog is more enlightened than I am, and my dog is my relationship coach. You can see them in the background here. I should do the Price is Right thing. There we go. And I think Terry, you'll appreciate my sign that a girlfriend gave me. A good coach can change a game. A great coach can change a life.
That's beautiful.
I live it. I live it every day. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here and for starting my day off on the most positive note. And we're friends now. We're bonded. You're not going to get rid of me. So, guys, reach out to us and share this 5-star reviews. Let's build this I Never Knew community. And it's just going to get bigger and better. And we're sharing stories because in this human experience, we're helping one another. So, thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.